All right, today we're going to pull back the curtain on a concept that secretly runs the world. It dictates the price of everything, from your morning latte to the latest smartphone. It's called supply. And while it sounds simple, its impact is absolutely massive. So let's jump right in. I mean, really think about it. One week it's one price, the next it's a little higher. Why? Well, the short answer is supply. And by the end of this, you're going to see how the tiny decisions made in a local coffee shop are actually a perfect miniature of the huge forces that shape our entire global economy. So to really get a grip on this, let's follow the owner of a local coffee shop. The choices they make every single day. How much coffee to brew, what to charge. They're a perfect real-world window into how supply actually works. So what do we actually mean by supply? It is not just a pile of coffee beans sitting in the back room. In economics, supply is the amount a producer is both willing and able to sell at a certain price right now. Those two words, willing and able, are everything. You gotta have both. And that brings us to a really common point of confusion, the difference between stock and supply. Imagine a farmer has a giant silo filled with 10,000 kilos of wheat. That huge amount, that's their stock. But if they only decide to bring 5,000 kilos to the market to sell today, that's the supply. See the difference? Supply is what's on the table, ready to be sold.
So how does our coffee shop owner decide how many cups to have ready each morning? Well, they're not just guessing. They're following a powerful, unspoken rule that guides producers everywhere.
This right here is the law of supply. And honestly, it's pretty much common sense when you think about it. All it's saying is that when prices go up, producers want to sell more stuff. And when prices go down, they're going to sell less. And what's the reason for this? It all comes down to one simple, powerful word: profit. I mean, if you can suddenly sell a cup of coffee for a higher price, every single cup you sell is more profitable. That incentive, that chance for more profit, is the engine that drives our coffee shop owner to fire up the espresso machine and sell more. Check this out. This table is called a supply schedule, and it just puts that idea into numbers. Look, if coffee is selling for $2 a cup, our owner is willing to supply 100 cups. But if the going rate jumps to $5, whoa, that profit motive kicks in, and they're ready to supply 400 cups. The only thing that changed was the price. Okay, but what if we wanted to see that table as a picture? Well, that's all a supply curve is. Don't let the graph intimidate you. The price is on the vertical line, the quantity is on the horizontal one, and you can see as the price goes up, the quantity supplied goes up with it, creating that classic upward slope. Every single point on this line is just one of the rows from that table we just saw. That's it. Okay, so we've got a handle on our one little coffee shop. They're making their decisions based on price. But they're not the only game in town, right? What happens when we zoom out and look at all the coffee sellers in the entire city? This is where we get to the idea of market supply. And I know that sounds like a big, fancy term, but it's actually super simple. It's just the total amount of coffee that all the shops in town are willing to sell at each price point, all added together. So here you can see the individual supply curves for two different shops. Let's call them Firm A and Firm B. They both have that upward slope, but you'll notice Firm B is willing to supply a little more at every price. Maybe they have a bigger machine or just work faster. Either way, these are their individual game plans. And this is how we get the market supply curve. We literally just add them up. We do it horizontally. So you pick a price, say $3. You see how many cups Firm A will supply, see how many Firm B will supply. Add those two numbers together and you put a new dot. You do that for every single price and voila, you get the supply curve for the entire market. So far, we've only been talking about price, as if it's the only thing that matters. But we all know the real world is way more complicated than that. Other things are happening all the time that can totally change the game for supply. Yeah, this is the really big question. What happens if the price of coffee beans suddenly doubles? Or what if someone invents a new super fast espresso machine? These kinds of events don't just push us to a different spot on the supply curve, they shift the entire curve. Economists have a name for these factors. They call them supply shifters. For our coffee shop, this is stuff like the cost of their inputs, the beans and milk. It could be new technology, like that faster machine. Or what if a new cafe opens down the street? That's more sellers. Even the government can get involved with things like taxes. So let's just take that technology example and run with it. Imagine our shop owner gets a brand new espresso machine that's twice as fast. It basically cuts their cost and time for each cup in half. How is that going to affect how much coffee they're willing to sell?
Well, the entire supply curve shifts to the right. Look at the diagram. That jump from S1 to S2 means that, thanks to the new machine, our owner is now willing to supply more coffee at every single price level. Even at the old $2 price, they're now happy to sell way more than before. It's a whole new ballgame.
And this rightward shift has an official name. It's called an increase in supply. And hey, here's a super easy trick to remember this. On a graph, right means more, and left means less. So if the coffee bean costs went through the roof, that would be a decrease in supply, and the whole curve would shift to the left. This is a totally different thing than just moving along the old curve because the price changed. Now, just when you think you've got it all figured out, economics loves to throw a curveball. It turns out that for almost every rule, there's a weird exception, and the law of supply is no different. This one is pretty fascinating. Think about this for a second. The hours you work are the supply of labor you offer to the market. Your wage is the price. So it seems obvious that the higher your wage, the more hours you'd want to work, right? Well, not always. This is the famous backward-bending supply curve of labor. It's a total paradox. At first, just like the law says, as wages go up, people are willing to work more hours. But you can see it right there on the graph. After a certain point, a really high wage might actually make people work less. They start thinking, you know what? I've made enough money. Now I want more free time to actually enjoy it. And the supply curve literally bends backward. So what's the bottom line here? The principles of supply, they're like a hidden force shaping our world. They influence the price of your coffee, sure, but also the global flow of everything from oil to microchips, and even the career path you choose. Getting a handle on this stuff gives you a powerful new lens for seeing how the world really works. So, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Now that you know what these supply shifters are, technology, input costs, all that stuff, what are the big shifts you see happening out in the world right now? Think about it. Thanks for tuning in.